Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode by Hybrid, The Talks. Today's guest is Lisa Smith, Global Executive Creative Director of JKR and Design Advisor at Canva, with a career spanning from Chobani, Wolf Hollins, and standout brands like Burger King and The Met. Lisa is one of the Fast Company's most creative people and a true force in bright design. Lisa, welcome to The Talks.
Hi, Demetris. Very nice to meet you. Excited to be here.
Likewise, and thank you for taking the time. I know you're very busy, but this is great and very important for us. So, to get things started, tell me a little bit about your daily routine. What do you do actually in your role?
The mystery of what a global ECD does. How
Yeah.
much do they touch the work versus not? I'm still very much involved in client work. I partner with an equivalent of a business lead and a strategy lead, and we're like a trifecta that kind of work in partnership across kind of a portfolio of clients that we've built or won or grown over the time that we've worked together. So right now we work on things like Walmart, where then we have the relationship with the client. But I have creative directors and design directors and all of those. But sometimes we're working on up to like 10 different projects for that client. So even that team can feel lean in the best ways, but the different combinations of them work on different projects that suit their skills and their passions. So some of it is about curating. Other times it's kind of helping sort of tell the stories and narratives to the client to help them go through the sort of the step changes that we have to. And working with a client right now where it's in a very kind of aggressive sprint that we signed up for. So we all held hands together. So you have to work a bit more. Some of the team have to work more dedicated on that because it's going very, very fast. But I come out, spend a lot of time with their client and then a lot of the stakeholders and taking them through it at different stages so that everybody comes along for the journey. So there's no like surprises or the work doesn't get sold through. But it is a lot of like more the strategic sort of navigation and making sure the work is really fit and right for them and helping the creatives tell the story. So it's more kind of creating briefs and helping and curating the talent. So, but each one's different because you've got the large ones, you've got the fast ones, you've got the smaller ones where sometimes like I just worked on the identity for the D&AD Awards and Festival with the team that we all sort of initially volunteered, but then it was actually a much bigger job once we were in it. Designing a festival is no mean feat, but that's where I'll work really heavily on what the idea is and what the visual articulation is and really collaborate with the creative. So I have some stuff that I'm like high touch and some stuff that I'm low touch, and I love the work, so I want to be in and around it and breathe it and talk with the creatives, rip it up, put it back together.
Yeah.
Probably more so than probably a lot of people at my level do.
Hmm.
And I deliberately sort of collaborated with my boss, who's the global CCO, to sort of come out a little bit more less of like, how does the JKR business run versus how sort of leading sort of some of our largest clients through sort of brand transformations. And that's what gets me excited. It's what I'm good at. I'm not as good at looking at Excel spreadsheets on what the EBITDA is and all the business stuff. So we sort of had that coming to Jesus after a couple of years where I've been at JKR and I could feel the pressure to be more and more involved in the
On the
business.
KPI side of things.
Yeah, and yeah, it just doesn't excite me as much. I'm not unbusiness savvy, but I'm more business savvy on behalf of my clients and the power of design and brand can have in helping them either get more reach, more relevancy, grow in some shape or form. That's where I think my business nous is better put.
Okay. Sounds very interesting. And it got me curious while you were speaking because you're touching upon creativity and the strategic side of things. And when we're talking about global clients, you have a lot of guidelines, you have a lot of restrictions, a lot of the times compliance or legal get in the way. So,
Mhm.
how does a creative studio like JKR with global exposure maintain creativity in situations like this?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question because I even think back just prior to JKR, I worked in house at a brand called Chobani, And
Mm.
we often talk about that we put design at the heart of the business that sort of helped transform it. And I also remember joining there with not a lot of background in packaging. And we were like building and creating and curating a team to take on not only sort of the rebrand efforts for Chobani, but there was also at the time, I think, 3 or 4 different kind of product lines. So there was probably about anywhere between 250 and 500 SKUs of yogurt to rebrand within the pillars of being like core Greek yogurt with fruit versus things that you put more like sprinkles and things on top. But I remember like looking and thinking, God, I'm going to need like hardcore packaging designers to do this because I don't understand all of the kind of the legal challenges and all the different pieces around packaging. But every time I met someone who'd come more from traditional packaging, they felt like they were all the challenges and restrictions were the top of mind. Well, you would only be able to do
Okay.
this and you would only be able to do that. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I just want a bunch of creators that are just going to blow it all up and then we'll figure that little bit out afterwards. So it's kind of a metaphor for probably a lot of other work that I do. And honestly, probably I don't think if I'd had pure packaging designers on Chobani, we would have got the designs and the results that we got, where one of the designers was an illustrator and she hand painted all the fruits and it just felt warmer and delicious. And it kind of completely changed that category of yogurt and didn't look like anything else out there. So it really, I think, curating different types of talent really changed it. But of course, when I joined sort of JKR, and we have some very established clients, whether it's in the sort of Kraft Heinz portfolio, whether we work with the Mars clients, Unilever clients, all of those types of clients where honestly, you are not only doing rebrands and refreshes, you're also doing a lot of portfolio architecture with large portfolios. So take the Heinz portfolio from mayonnaise to ketchup to your baked beans to all of those like every single thing in their portfolio. And you're using design and codes and different pieces and hierarchy, obviously, to clearly differentiate them, but also keep them connected to each other. And I think that comes with an expertise. So curating the right talent with the right sort of business expertise and category expertise is needed. I couldn't put non-packaging designers on the Heinz portfolio.
Yeah.
You need to understand all that regulatory, legal, compliance, all the challenges you're gonna have to overcome. And of course, we have an amazing sort of packaging production team, so that comes together. But in other sort of businesses, say I work in tech or entertainment or sports, and I'm thinking of all the categories that I work in beyond CPG and FMCG, I feel like striking that balance of creativity and business is the design challenge, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, again, bringing all the right stakeholders along for the journey. I think some, like, of course, and you're always going to get this, and I hear it, especially from maybe more politely younger designers that join meetings that I'm like, come to this client meeting, it's a great learning opportunity, and all of these different pieces, depending kind of what we figure out what their role is in the meeting. But often you hear, well, they just don't understand design. Well, they're not creative. Oh my God, they're
Yeah.
being so subjective. And that is a real trick to navigate. Yes, I'm working on a tech brand right now with a product team who I don't believe anyone's not creative. So I find that we
Mm.
try and go in with that mindset, but they are very dialed into what their product experience is. And they haven't had a lot of experience in what brand identity and behavior and what that could do. And somehow you have to kind of wrestle.
Navigated.
Yeah. And often we create things like I'll create criteria that remove the subjectivity. Is this on strategy? Is this going to be relevant with the audiences that you're after, but not alienating to the ones that already
Mm.
use it? Like all of those types of things. We try and remove some of that and create some clear criteria to try and keep them focused, to stop going, well, I just don't like that typeface, or I just don't like that color. Well, why don't you like that color? If this
Yeah.
color signals this, that is what we need to signal, then this color should be the right choice. But yeah, I mean, that's when you like work on a tech brand where you're working very closely with product, but then you go and work on the scale of like a Walmart, and the partnership between sort of the head of creative, for example, at Walmart, David Hartman, is the most powerful relationship you can have because you're both having to navigate it. I have a lot of empathy because I've worked in-house, so I understand when an agency presents work and goes, why is the client not buying that? Why is this? They have no clue that often
What's happening
times,
in hell?
my goodness, and all the layers and all the navigation and the risk and the investment and all of those things. It's very important to create a really good partnership with whoever's leading the program on the client side. Very lucky if it is a creative lead sometimes, because they can also help continually send the message around, don't be subjective, this work is on strategy, blah, 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 and this will work for XYZ reasons. But sometimes we don't have a creative client on that side. And some of the marketeers are very creative, but sometimes it is a business person. And then that is how can you spend as much time with them so I call it walking the halls.
Yeah.
So sorry, that went from a very long story from pack
No, actually, it's
compliance to business and
actually
scale.
I'm not. I don't know if you're looking at my notes, but
Mhm.
you actually bridged my next question greatly. So my next question is about signaling. Okay, so in a lot of the work that we do, we place things in identity or communication to signal something, to communicate something, either through symbolism or either through visual and emotional cues to create something so that the people who see it perceive it in a specific way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we now have two different philosophies around marketing. On the one side says that we have segmentation, targeting, positioning, and we need to articulate the brand based on the target segments. And the other one says that no one cares about the brand, no one cares about the message. You just need to be distinctive and differentiated in a way that you repeatedly say the message so you become top of mind. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think Burger King is a really good example of that, to be honest, or like when I think about it, because it's like they came to us with an insight that people weren't feeling great about eating their food. Now, when you start to get into kind of research and you go and you mine social media platforms and things like that, people don't feel that guilty about eating a
Yeah.
burger over a salad. More people post about eating burgers than they do salad. So they off and when you go to like a or in the West Coast in an In-N-Out or a Shake Shack, people are not feeling guilty about that. So they were on a journey regardless of that sort of insight around the time to start removing sort of artificial ingredients, and they were going to start with the Whopper, so the sugars, the colorings, anything that was somewhat kind of artificial was being removed. And then it was a journey to transform the menu and like eventually get into sodium and other types of things for really, you know, as bad as like a lot of us would think these companies are, all the fast food chains, for one of them to take note and start to think about the menu and makes incremental changes, that's a huge journey. So what they wanted to do was then stick claims all over the packaging. We'll reduce the artificial colors, we're taking out this, we're doing this, blah, blah, blah. The truth of the matter is most consumers are blinded by claims at this point. Any packaging, any food, whether it's in a restaurant or a restaurant that you're taking things out or in the supermarket, there's only so much information we can take in. Like literally the packaging is covered in the claims, and some of them legally we have to put them on there, all of those types of things. But we're just like, God, I don't know if that is going to help people understand that the food is delicious and it's removing those things. And the more we got into like auditing the kind of Burger King brand, you know, even starting at the logo that came from the sort of 90s style, it was artificial. It had swooshes and
Yeah.
gloss and like, so even that signaled some level of artificiality. Then the rest of the experience was broken. The packaging and the uniforms were different to the restaurant experience. Everybody was having a very different restaurant experience. It was like one could be nice, another one is horrible. The trays are dirty, the uniform's dirty. Like you were just like, why is this experience so inconsistent? And that's not signaling, people don't feel good about eating food. It's nothing, it might not even be that much to do with the food, because what we're understanding is people don't feel that guilty about being indulgent now and again. It's actually that your brand and your experience has got like fractured and doesn't feel like the level of quality. And we just want this brand to feel craveable and delicious. And the key was sort of like, make the brand as craveable as the food, make the design as craveable as the food. And craveability was the key word. Like, I think when we worked on Duncan, it was proud, and that was why it's bold and sort of chest beady. That was the style of that brand. This was about craveability. So then when you take an idea like that, it seems really easy, but you start obviously in mood worlds and like, what are the codes of making something feel delicious and craveable and mouth-watering and juicy? And hence where we went to a big, like, I remember we were using a 60s typeface called Hobo, which does look very 60s when you look at it. But it was the spine of that font, because it just looked like it was bulging and like it was bursting with flavor. And I know that like some people will probably think we're completely crazy designers talking about type in this way, but like it was juicy and delicious, and we created the flares, and everything on that font just felt like it made you want to mouth water, and the way it animated and moved. So it was very heavily a brand also executed in motion. And then we made the photography and the level, like finding the sweet spot of the level of saturation, not altering and retouching the food and having it in its rawest state, but it's really warm, and that type of feeling made it just so like it made you salivate. The language, which is like, again, there, every single part of the identity were the codes that could reinforce the sort of deliciousness and craveability and mouth watering, which, as I said, like that beats putting claims on it. And yes, then we can talk about some of those kind of messages and have actions like they did with the Moldy Whopper was a huge kind of statement and thing that it's like what it takes for a real burger to go into the state of like rotten mold and all of those things versus something that's got artificial ingredients. It's brilliant. Like there's actions that they were managing to make to communicate some of those things. But and that's what we try to do for every brand, no matter what like I'm working on a sports brand right now, and it's like that core idea that sits at the heart is what we try and filter every piece of design through.
Okay. Talking about the work of a global creative studio, where does your work start and where does it end? Because talking about brand, you might be doing the identity part and the communication and the whole harmonization of how the brand should express. But then there's also intrinsic activities like employer branding or how you will communicate culture or how you will change culture. So where does it start and where does it
Yeah.
end?
And again, that all depends on sometimes, again, the capabilities of on the brand side of like, what does their team look like? So sometimes some clients just, commission us just for the brand identity, which comes with brand strategy and sort of setting everyone up with the same sort of toolkit so that they can go and activate it in internal culture or across any of their other kind of like products or portfolio, etc. But I think Walmart's the best example. I think we're in our third year together, working together. And yes, the brand identity was just one piece of that puzzle. But they had done a lot of work themselves also on their strategy, but we came in and sort of, we did spend a very sort of the beginning of that process and that project working on and sort of building out what their sort of brand, which they've got like we're not touching their purpose, save money, live better. That was very sacred to who they
Yeah.
are. But at the time, they were going through a positioning transformation, which was kind of around people-led. The brand is very people-led, tech-powered. And that they were really, I mean, I now think 3 years later and everyone's in AI and we're talking about artificial intelligence powered by human intelligence. It is probably, they were kind of ahead of themselves, but it was also just like what was kind of really cool was it was also thinking about, you're always going to have humans deliver, but you might have technology help you pack the boxes and curate, like get all the kind of merchandise that you're going to be delivering. Like, how do you put both together to be as efficient, smart, get things on time, but people led has always been the most core to that brand. So that was a big piece that was sort of happened as we started the project, which was a huge re-engineering of like how Walmart is going to go to market and grow and do all the things that they want to do with this kind of people-led, tech-powered mentality. And then we kind of come in and go, well, how are we going to do that? And we're going to do that by being there for always in all ways. So that was our sort of like equivalent of craveability. Always is a line that is rooted in the sort of history of Walmart, but being there for always is like we show up throughout everyone's life, which is if when you sort of learn in America that 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of Walmart, they're there when people have children, they're going back to school, back to college, weddings, anniversaries, deaths, all the things, any kind of moment, this brand plays quite a
Yeah.
fundamental role in people's lives. And so, but how it shows up in all ways was the big move towards kind of like, we've always been about our physical footprint, but we have to keep advancing in digital. Like, we had little insights of like, oh, you're in a Walmart and then you come out of a Walmart and you might use a competitor's platform because you forgot something. It's like, but you're outside. Why? Well, one, I get it. You don't have time to go back inside, but how do you make sure they then follow through onto the app
Yeah.
and do all of those things? And I think that's where they've had a lot of success recently with Walmart Plus, which is growing and growing so that they can give this kind of full holistic offering to their customers, no matter, it's at the touch of a fingertip. Do you know what I mean? Like it's there with you for always, in always, wherever you show up. So then we had to sort of make the brand feel very people-led, tech-powered. It needed to feel digital and seamless. But I think the beauty of the identity was, whilst it feels very tech-forward, it's got a lot of like lineage back to their heritage. So they had
Okay.
this avant-garde, antique olive typeface, which has a lot of character that was used in the 70s and 80s. And we really wanted to make sure that we weren't doing the texy of sansness and falling into tropes that would remove personality but still keep and add character. We went back and redrew a modernized version of the very famous hat that Sam Walton wore on his Made in America book, which was a big, fun, characterful Walmart. You have to remember that they were using the typeface they were using. I think it was Myriad or something. It was so generic, like honestly, so character. I know people still think, oh, we just made everything bolder, which I'm like, that's totally fine. But in truth, every single thing changed apart from the spark, which we did just make bolder. But I think that's also learning what's the degree of change. Like to have a digital shorthand like a Spark or Nike has the swoosh or Target has the target, whether they're abstract or literal symbols like the apple for Apple. I mean, Apple and Target are lucky because they're very literal symbols. So that's like
Yeah.
easy. Other people have more metaphoric ones like the Herculean swoosh for Nike, or this kind of spark of imagination, which I think is where the
Yeah.
original origin came from. But when you get to the bottom of it and you ask consumers, what do you remember about Walmart? Everyone could draw the symbol. Even if they drew too many spokes on it, essentially they knew the idea of what the shorthand mark for Walmart is. So why would I go and change that? So it's learning what do you touch versus what do you not touch. And in anything, we got to a point where that mark had been being used for, I think it was maybe 93 or some, anyway, it'd been being used, and we could fact check that and double check that, but it's like it'd been being used for quite some time, and really it hadn't been used. Now people were recognizing it. It hadn't been used like how Nike used their swoosh. So we were like, actually, we need to double down on this symbol, and it needs to show up in more meaningful ways, not decoration like wallpapers and patterns, stuff which people tend to make huge mistakes with their symbols
Yeah.
and just go and almost overuse them in those ways. But actually, it has to be the app symbol. It needs to be the symbol that's on your watch. It needs to be at a scale and a boldness that I can see it on my browser. At the time, it was still locked up to Walmart. So the idea of releasing it from a traditional lockup of a word mark and a symbol, that was even a huge move. So even now on the stores, they sit at different ends of like the facade, because now we can make one much bigger or smaller, or it's just releasing it so that it becomes a symbol in culture that everyone remembers and can see. But I appreciate, yeah, the sort of society at large is like, you just made the
Yeah.
identity bolder.
Nice, nice. And now I'm gonna move into a different subject. I would like to talk about Canva because uh, a lot of people in the design industry might say that Canva is doing damage instead of doing good.
Hmm.
Maybe designers will say that, but at the same time, we see that it enabled people to create themselves. What is your take based on your position as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So I sit on the design advisory board, which is the first year of Canva putting together a curated team from all sorts of different backgrounds and very global. It's really amazing, and we have a good time when we all meet together. But yeah, a lot of us have very different backgrounds, and there's a few of us more from sort of branding backgrounds. And I have also heard a few very outspoken creative leaders in the branding world go, this product is taking everyone our jobs. And yeah, I've always believed in democratization in terms of
Mm,
like access for everyone. The truth of the matter is, this came about, and everybody said that now everyone could take a photo. So no longer, with the Apple phone, do we need photographers? That is very untrue. So, okay, Canva comes on board. Everybody is empowered to design, which is incredible. They have created templates and different methods so that even my mum could design an invite
yeah.
for a party. So be it. I think that's incredible. I think that's what makes it very different to a lot of other products on the market or brands on the market that have either gone direct straight to professional. I don't know. It's really weird to say that, but I guess we're going to call ourselves pro designers. Obviously, we do it as a career. We are probably like 1% of like the world that's
Mhm.
designing. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like
Yeah.
a certain altitude and using sort of design for business. So I appreciate that there's a lot. And what I really like, have really sort of come to love about Canva is also when you work on a really large brand. And I've seen an amazing case study where Canva's working in collaboration with FedEx, for example, and I think they work with Disney on some of this too, is that it's the idea that all your employees, so say people at Disney or FedEx that work in local offices all around the globe, you could then create, the design team in partnership with Canva can create templates that are
Yeah.
seasonal and put onto the Canva platform. There can be then obviously an enterprise license. A lot of people will get the free access licenses, but regardless. And what we can do is then push out seasonal templates, and people can rescale and then have the ability to like make social for their local store wherever they're based and all of these types of things. But there is then still a certain level of consistency. So I'm really loving the sort of brand toolkit side more for the professional side and consistency and the sort of scalability. So that's something I'm very excited about. I think in terms of why they've put an advisory board together is for us to sort of help navigate this murky
Change.
conversation around democratization versus professionals using it. And I've often asked and spent time with we got to spend some time with some of the founders from Canva, asking them, why would you want pro designers? Why do you want me on that platform? Because at the moment, it isn't the sort of interface and the access to all these templates. I create my own templates for my own clients.
Yeah.
Like I need to be able to switch all of that off, remove the noise, and be able to kind of customize per my client, because basically, in truth, I'm a chameleon. I don't have a set look and feel. I am designing for 15 different brands
Everything.
currently at the moment. And whether it's the personality of a Burger King to a Walmart to a sports team to all of those things, like I need to be able to create the templates for my clients in that. Now you can, but at the moment it's still not like a switch on, switch off mode and all of those types of things. So at the moment, I think it's a tool that professional designers are just sort of starting to figure out, is this really handy? Now, I do a lot of work also. I'm on the board of DNAD, and I work with a lot with shift students, which are kids that come from non-traditional backgrounds in terms of like they don't come from formal education and they want to get into the creative industries. And I will tell you, every single one of them is using Canva right now. So it's really interesting. There's that, which is the whole next wave that are coming into the industry are very Canva fluent. Now, for someone like me, again, I work a lot in a keynote right now where I'm creating the narratives, the presentations, and I'm almost like posting noting, this is where the work goes, this is what bit of the work we want, this is that. I'm like more working on probably the narrative. Canva could totally do that for me. But what I need it to do is speak to the other programs that the designers are using to make the work. So, there's again, competitive products on the market. We've all grown up with one of the biggest ones. I'm not going to say their name, but I think the excitement I have around Canva is their acquisition of Affinity, which is the equivalent of some of the programs that designers use every day. And those are going to speak to Canva and really transform our workflow, where it's like, I'd be like, I don't like the curve on that logo. That will alert the designer. They will be in Affinity. They'll be able to update it, and I'll be able to approve it back into the presentation. And we will just be able to, won't need millions of Zooms, hundreds of Slacks, all of the things that we've like, when especially when you're working remote like me, you're like always on Slack, always texting. This isn't quite looking right yet, and we're using many channels to communicate. I could see a really awesome, seamless workflow for professional designers, but we're on that journey right now, and that's something we collaborate with. But the pure premise of empowering the world to design, I am all for it. I don't see that is not going to take professional designers' jobs. They're just like,
Definitely.
I get really, it's like I talked to one of the other members on the board, and we talked about many, many years ago, some very famous American designers were like, when it was going from sort of like typesetting and blocks and all the metal letters and that, and they were like, the computer appeared, and they were like, oh my God, I'm never going to use this. This is awful. This is taking away our craft and our industry. Years later, you see them like pointing to their creatives over the top. You need to move this here and do this here. AI feels like that right now to everyone. Everyone's like, oh my God, are we going to lose our jobs? And then I'm at the point, I was only doing a talk last week where I was like, oh my God, have you seen the brand identities? There's actually a really good article out there doing the circulation about the brand identities for all of these AI platforms. At this point, I don't know which one does which. They all look the same. So I'm like, they have a branding issue. So
They do.
we're going to have to come in. I'm like, oh, this is going to keep up branding studios in work for a while, because I don't know which one I'm meant to use for what. And that, if I'm a creative and I don't know which one to use, I mean, I default to a couple that I'm now much more familiar with and really like using, and I've sort of like blocked out the noise. But even when I'm seeing really cool, like people go into like making really cool new films or animations, they talk about using 20 different AI companies, let alone obviously they're using the different models within those companies. And I'm just like, oh my God, how did you know which ones to use and what one was going to, is this just an experiment? Is this like painting in layers? I don't understand. So anyway, we're still all figuring this out, but I don't believe yes, it's going to make things very smarter and things that need to automate, like templates and consistencies for brands around the globe. Yes, there's going to be huge amounts of improvement, but all of this is just giving more time back for the real creatives to be really
Yeah,
creative. So
yeah, definitely. And the way I see it is that all of these tools, Canva or any other tool or AI, yes, on the one hand, they're democratizing access. They're giving you the chance to work and be a creator yourself. But on the other side, it's not that they're taking your job away for the professional, because they're not giving you the brains or the talent you have to do it yourself.
yeah,
It's two different things.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the bit, that's the nuance. If Canva, as we sort of embark on that, wants more pro designers to use it, that it's going to need to feel more like a blank canvas
Yeah,
so that we can create and customize in the way that we do, just the same way as all their creator community create templates for other people and that empower my mum and my brother and my next door neighbor to make the things that they need, either for their businesses or for parties or for whatever their needs are, that they need to make something that they're distributing. And I love that it does all those photo books as well. People love making those things, and that it's just, it's made it so
great.
easy. It's amazing. Like,
It's
I'm all
amazing.
for
Of
anything
course it
that
is.
makes this world look better. There is so
Yeah.
much like horrible like design out there that it's exciting. So yeah.
And at the end of the day, we live in a world where everything is pivoted and worksheet oriented and numbers and one O's. So we want people to be creative. We wanted to be able to experience the magic of thinking something and put it
Yeah.
into visual or sound or whatever.
Yeah.
Moving now towards growth, tell me a little bit about how you define growth personally, and how you see it through your work being deployed for a brand.
I mean, so do you mean more like, yeah, so like business growth? Or
Mm,
I think, I mean, often when a brand comes to to JKR, they all come with a brief, and sometimes the brief is spot on. Sometimes the challenge or the problem isn't what they think the challenge and the problem is. But a lot of the briefs are around reach and relevancy. So, you take any brand in terms of like, I even think back to the Met, it was the number one visitor attraction in the US. But the truth of the matter is they weren't relevant with the next generation that were coming up. So how did they need to act and behave for that next generation that was coming in? And that was going to take some kind of behavioral change. And I think when you start to go kind of figure out this reach and relevancy, and I'm working on a tech brand right now, and it's like their their product is in, it's just a fact, it's in decline. People are not using it or aware of it, or sometimes people say, oh, that's what my dad used to use, like, or I like downloaded it once, why would I need it? So I think that there's a real kind of sort of bias awareness. But we can't alienate the original people that use it and love it. So how do you keep that? But then how do you then reimagine the brand to make it much more kind of relevant? And sometimes it's not just design. Obviously design can't just do that. This is where
yeah,
kind of brand strategy plays a really key role, because brands at the heart of the brand strategy, it can help you transform your business in terms of like the products you're trying to focus on, the features within those products that should evolve and develop or be created that are then relevant. So it's like that's one of the most important pieces of work, because actually the look and feel and your expression is only one part of that. I mean, for Burger King, that was a huge, almost the expression was almost the number one priority, but they were transforming their product at the time. So they kind of went hand in hand. Other times we sort of get hold of a brand where they haven't started transforming their product as well as their expression. So does the expression go first and then the product, or does the product go first and then we give it the new expression? But you kind of want the product to be the proof point that change is happening. Otherwise, we're just lipsticking something that already existed and just trying to make it cooler. And any consumer will see through that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so to gradually wrap it up, I'm gonna do some rapid fire questions now so we
Okay.
get the essence of Lisa's world through your business and your work. So tell me a principle you live by as a creative leader.
I think mine is always about shaking up the norm. I always think about like, so shaking things up, I guess, is the principle, but it's just like, it's not for the sake of it, but it is like, why have you come to us? What is the challenge? What is the problem? And try to encourage people to look at it from different perspectives. So not just, again, like the sort of like the evolution to revolution, that's a real spectrum, and some
Yeah,
clients can only do those in steps and some people can jump very heavily to the end. I'm okay with all of that. It has to be what's the right thing for the business, but just
as long as
shaking it
not
up,
lip sticking.
long as it's not lip sticking. Exactly.
Yeah. And now tell me about a book or a movie or a piece of art or music that changed how you work or think.
Oh my god, a movie or a piece of music. I mean, it's so much. I just consume so much all the time. I think the biggest thing, I suppose, yeah, I always go back to the first sort of when I first started working publishers, well, a design agency called Browns, but we did a lot of publishing work. That was where I sort of first discovered sort of Martin Parr. And I think what
Hmm.
I liked about Martin's work so much, it was a snapshot of society as it really is. There was no
Yeah.
gloss, there was no anything. And he found beauty in the most mundane things. So one of my favorite images I always show at the beginning of talks is just a picture of a cup of tea on a mat. But it's like, but it reminded me of I have so much nostalgia for like the tablecloth reminds me of my nan's, like the mat that my mum had, like, but it all clashes and it's just like, I don't know. I just always, I loved, and I still love his work so much today. And I think it's just finding the beauty. I think the metaphor for it is finding the beauty in the everyday things.
Okay, great. And finally, what's something that you recently changed your mind about?
What have I recently changed my mind about? I don't know, recent, but I do think my journey of like 25 years has come to respect that not everyone's going to be able to make the leaps or see it the way that I see it. So, I mean, obviously,
Hmm.
a lot of the times I think we're sharing a vision and I already can see the answer, but others can't see that answer yet. And I have to go on the steps to take them on the journey to go there.
Bridge the gap.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
that's
have
really
a bit
clever.
more, maybe what I've learned is to have more empathy for people that can't see it yet, instead of just getting angry and annoyed and bitching about it. Like, it's just like, it's the way it is.
Perfect, perfect. Really powerful talk. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
So, where can people follow your work or hear more about you? Or if
Well,
you're
yeah, I mean, ironically, I don't have a website. That's kind of crazy in this day and age, but I don't need it because of a lot of the brands I've worked on just live in society. You can just Google those. But obviously, going to JKR's website is good, and also we talk a lot. Like some of the case studies we show, we talk about the business narrative. So if people want to get more understanding between those. I've done a lot of podcasts, as I'm sure at this point people can find me very easily online.
pretty sure about that.
that's taken me years to get comfortable with that. But I'm sort of a big believer in the next generation coming in, and anything I can do to help sort of educate about more my journey that helps other people with theirs, it makes me less shy of doing these things these days.
Great talk, Lisa.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure everyone who listened to it already know your work. So, uh, I mean, the only thing I can say is thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation.